Good morning from Johannesburg, South Africa, 10:30 a.m. Good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are in the world. Do not judge me by my success. Judge me by how many times I fell down and got back up again. Those are the words of Nelson Mandela. My words. Judge me by my grit and resilience and how many times I bounce back from adversity or from disappointment. Hi, I am Lois from Coaching Conversations for Change and from Walking Without Skin, two different products or services that I provide. One of the earlier speakers on this wonderful speaker summit with David, thank you so much, Adam Montandon said, to be a good speaker, you need to lead an interesting life. Well, my life has been one of adventure, surviving and thriving. It really has been an interesting life. Another of the speakers, Werner Baden, talks about intention and necessity. Well, I have two intentions which are necessary to my well-being and to my survival. One is to make life better or easier for people who have gone through life, be it life, personal or business adversity, to give them the grit and the resilience to manage change. We all have hardships, we all have problems. How do we get back? How do we focus on a new reality after having experienced some form of adversity? And the second one is to help people forgive themselves and to forgive the perpetrators of the cause of the adversity. And to remember that forgiveness is not about condoning what the other person or people have done. It is about breaking your bonds or breaking your ties to those other people. So what I have is I have an A to Z of thriving based on my own experience, my own mishaps and mayhem that I have had throughout my life. So A to Z, that's 36. I don't think I can, 26. I don't think I can get through each letter in 30 minutes. There's too much to discuss. So I'll just go through a couple of the letters of my A to Z to explain how one can overcome hardships and adversity. So the first one is A. A is to accept the adversity. What has happened to you has happened to you, regardless of what the cause or who was to blame, who was at fault. It doesn't really matter. Adversity is there. Accept it. Don't just ignore it. Don't push it under the table. You have to experience it and accept it. So that adversity could be losing your job, getting retrenched, going on forced retirement. That happened to me. I was forced into retirement when I certainly wasn't ready. It could be bankruptcy, also one of my experiences. I lost a business, went into liquidation, very difficult. It could be something personal. You might get divorced. That happened to me. It might be any form of hurt. It could be violence or abuse. It could be an accident. It could be an illness. You could be financially destitute. All of those adversities, it's so important that you accept that it is and it has happened to you. So it's important that you feel it, that you feel that pain. I broke my toe twice. You got to feel that pain. Feel it, experience it, feel the intensity, and actually rate that intensity on a scale of 1 to 10. So you can say, I was raped, for example. That was an intensity of 10. I broke my toe. It was about a 7. So rate that intensity and feel it, and feel whatever emotion comes with that adversity. Feel it, let it live with you, be with it. just don't stay there too long. It's important that you do experience it and don't just ignore it. What's important then is that you look for an alternative emotion to replace that emotion, and then you can start working down that scale and reducing the intensity of the emotion and then replacing it with a more positive emotion. The second letter in the A to Z is belief. B for belief. Believe in yourself. Believe that you will get over that hiccup, over that adversity, over that problem. Just know that you can. When you focus on a positive outcome, you have a good intention, you have a good goal, and believe that you can get there. That is so important. And we can go into mind mapping and visualization and law of attraction and all of those things. They all help as long as you believe that you can and will get there. I was hiking in Bhutan. I was hiking up to the tiger's nest. Hi, David. And the local people were debating, and they were taking bets that I wouldn't make it to the top because I am not terribly fit at the moment. And I just said, I'm going to make it. And when I came down, I did make it. And when I came down, I got cheers and everybody was dancing because I'd actually made it to the top and down again. I believed I could. It was difficult. It was a challenge. I focused on the outcome and I got there. The next letter is the C. And C is about consequences. What are the consequences of your actions? What is going to happen if I said, I don't believe in myself and I'm not going to make it to the top? Or that I'm just brushing that adversity under the table. The fact that I was so viciously raped and left for dead. If I just brushed it under the table, there are consequences. And in my case, there were consequences. I wanted to change the world after I was raped. These things don't happen to people like me. And I went on a rampage and I led marches through the streets of Cape Town and I had petitions to change the Constitution and I was out there wanting to change the world. And the result of that was that everybody was so proud of me and I became proud of myself. I was so strong and I was so brave. And the problem is there are consequences to all of those. And for me, the consequences came about 2 years later. And what happened was I suddenly had this back problem and I could not walk. And I went for 2 back operations and they both failed. And I was bedridden for 6 months. And it was only when somebody, my darling sister, pointed out to me that it was psychosomatic. What was happening is that I hadn't been weak after the rape because I was so strong in wanting to change the world. I hadn't really faced the reality of what had happened to me. And so by being laid up in bed and lying there suffering, it was wonderful. I could be weak and everybody fussed over me and everybody fetched and carried and did everything for me. So you got to know what the consequences are. Because the minute I realized that it was what I was doing, I was looking for everybody's sympathy and not even empathy. I wanted sympathy. I actually had 8 chiropractic treatments, and I got up and I did a 5-day hike with a 25-kilogram backpack on my back. So, and that was after the surgeon said I would never hike again. So if you understand the consequences of your decision, know what it is that is going to happen as a result of your decision. It's very important. Then we move on to also just on C, it's about communication as well. It's so important that whatever we are feeling, whatever we are desiring, that we share it and we share it in a clear and conscious manner. I used to be a scuba diver, and it's also, I love the analogy between scuba diving and communication, because when you're under the water, you can't communicate other than by body language and hand signals. And if you make a mistake with your communication, it could lead to dire consequences. And I remember I was scuba diving with a friend, and we were down at about 40 meters in the icy cold Cape waters. And I told her that I was running low on air. And in fact, I said, I'm out of air. And she said, okay. And that means let's go up. And she just started swimming to the surface, and I kept calling her back, and I kept saying, danger, danger, because if you go too fast to the surface, you get the bends. You get nitrogen, whatever it's called, I forget now. And so you've got to understand the language. You've got to make sure that the other person understands what you're saying. What she should have done, instead of surfacing, she should have come to me and given me her spare breathing, her octo, so that we could have surfaced safely together. It was a very scary experience for me. I had to, she started just zooming for dooms, zooming to the surface. I actually looked down, I saw some bubbles beneath me, and I swam down instead of up, and I took somebody else's spare breathing equipment. Ascend safely. So communication. And then also with C is courage. Having the courage to, as the first speaker said, it was about having an adventure, having experiences in your life. It's having the courage to do things. I've jumped out of aeroplanes. I drifted 5 kilometers off the drop zone. It was quite amazing. They call it a zap when you miss the drop zone by 100 meters. I missed it by 5 kilometers. It was quite an experience. It didn't stop me from jumping though. So it's taking the courage, and it's having that adventure as you go through life. Another experience I had was in Sweden. I was riding a snowmobile, and I was going down a frozen river at great speed, and the guide pointed up to the forest up on the bank, and he said, look, there's a moose. And me, instead of saying, oh, there's a moose, I went, oh, there's a moose. And this bike, because we were going at speed, I went up the embankment, and I landed on this embankment, and I was going at great speed, and these trees were coming at me like this, and I got really, really terrified, and I thought, what now? So I just turned the snowmobile back down the embankment, and of course I rolled. Fortunately, the snow was very soft and very deep, and so bike and driver were both safe. But it's having the courage to try something new, to do something different. You're never going to grow if you don't have that courage to take the next step. The D is for disputing and debating. It's about discussing what are the alternatives. What else can you do? What are the options available to you? If I go back to the rape, it was at the time back in 1995 when they were busy working on the new South African Constitution. And I had an impact on changing the Constitution. The person who raped me was out on bail, and I had an impact on changing the bail laws. So you need to change your dialogue, your outcome, and come up with a different, instead of wallowing in the self-pity, it's about finding an alternative debate or an alternative solution. That brings us to the E. And again, there's quite a lot of E's. I love energy, but I think emotional intelligence, it's something that everybody speaks about, but a lot of people don't really understand emotional intelligence. And it's how you interact with yourself. It's how you interact with the world around you. And it's important that you develop your emotional intelligence and your emotions to understand that there are opposite emotions that you can work for. So maybe you are suffering from grief. You've lost somebody, you've lost a job, something sad has happened in your life. You need to then look, what is the alternative emotion? And that could be joy or serenity or some other emotion. And there's so many tools and techniques. I use a wheel of emotions. and it's a very powerful technique to work with emotions. But emotional intelligence is how you manage yourself, it's how you manage your relationships, it's how you manage your work, and it's how you manage your community, how you respond to other people's conversations, other people's conflict, and it's about having control of those outcomes. F is about follow through. It's about getting it done. Don't stop halfway through. Follow through. I've had a lot of occasions where I've had to follow through. I was hiking in Nepal, and we were hiking at about 5,000 meters. We were searching for a frozen lake, and there was no path, and we were knee-deep in snow, and I just wanted to give up. And you can't. You have to carry on. And it's so important that when all these adversities and all these problems and all these issues hit you, that you have the energy and the focus to follow through. Focus on the outcome. Focus on the result and the success you want to obtain. The result for me at 5,000 meters, looking at Mount Everest, sitting in the highest hotel in the world with electric blankets and cold beer. It was absolutely wonderful, thinking of all those people down at base camp, freezing in tents. So follow through and the results will be there. And for me, the biggest F is forgiveness, is to forgive the perpetrator. It's not always that easy, and it's also important that you forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for being where you were at the time. Forgive yourself for saying the things that you did. It could be little things. You might have just brushed somebody off. Forgive yourself for doing that, because at the time you were doing the best that you could with what you had. So do learn how to forgive yourself. I have techniques on forgiveness. I actually, 14 years after I was raped, I went to the prison. It was his parole hearing, and I forgave the rapist in the prison. And the most wonderful part of that is that it's freeing. And I didn't walk out of that prison. I flew out of that prison. They said to me they would let me know within 7 days if he had been given parole or not. And to my surprise, I turned around and I said, "Nah, I don't want to know. I'm not interested. What happens to him now has nothing to do with me anymore." And I broke that tie and that relationship with that individual completely. And that was through the power of forgiveness. G is about grit. So if I define grit, it's my drive, it's my passion, it's my perseverance, it's my persistence that keeps me interested and focused on my goals and aspirations. So you need to have that aspiration. I like the word aspiration over that of a goal. A goal is more the steps that get you to your aspiration. And I have an aspiration to change the world. I really want to see women be safe. I want to see them get over their trauma and to manage their lives so much easier. And men. And I'm really focused on that. It was a dream of mine 24 years ago when I was raped, and I did nothing about it. I went out on that rampage to change the world, and then I went and got a job and worked, and then I went to a conference in 2014 where I said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to help women be safe and to manage their emotions. And then I did nothing about it. And now finally I am focusing on my aspiration and I'm achieving it. I've got this wonderful summit coming up next month, and it's called Rape and Resilience. It's free, and it's really to help people focus on getting better. So again, grit is your passion, it's my perseverance, and it's my persistence that keeps me going. And I wanted to just go to M quickly, because M is Mojo. And I did some work recently. I ran a challenge on how to develop your Mojo. And Mojo it's that spirit, it's that positive spirit that starts inside you and radiates out to the rest of the world. And it's that positive spirit, it's your joy, it's your energy, it's what you're doing now. So it's not your aspiration and it's not your history. Right now, what are you doing that's positive? I mean, I'm really excited to be on this talk at the moment. It's what's happening to me right now. It's my joy and energy of being here in the present. Be mindful, be present. And it starts from the inside, okay? How you see yourself, what you believe, how you look after yourself, your mind, your body, your soul, your spirituality. And it radiates to the outside. So it's how you project yourself, how you present yourself to the world in that positive, energetic way. So I like to work with people to help them develop their purpose, their joy, their energy, their magic, their optimism, their creativity, and their confidence. That's what you radiate to the outside, your enthusiasm. And G is also, I want to go back to G. G is also about getting up. I was dog sledding I was dog sledding in Sweden, and the dog sleds have these little slats that you stand on, and I'm standing on the dog sleds, and there's a leather pad between the slats that you use as a brake. You put your foot on it to slow the dogs down. And I it gathered snow on it, so I was scraping the snow off and I lost my balance. And the dogs, when I fell, they told you don't let the dogs run because they will continue running. And so I grabbed onto one of the slats, I hung onto it, managed to stop the dogs. I didn't want to get back up. They radioed back to the start. They said there was nobody, there were no dogs to come and fetch me. I had to carry on. So whilst it wasn't my choice, I had no choice but to get back onto those dogs or walk back a number of kilometers through the snow. And I did get back up, and boy, it has to be one of my most amazing experiences I've ever had. So getting back up is very important. Pick yourself up, learn from your mistakes, forgive yourself, laugh, and carry on with renewed determination and vigor. And I wanted to also just give you my definition of resilience. So the letter R. Resilience is my opportunity that gets me back up. It helps me work with renewed energy and greater strength and determination after facing a difficult challenge. And boy, I've had those challenges, the retrenchments, the retirements, the divorce, the rape. And it's having that focus, having that energy, having that mojo to get yourself back. Focus on that aspiration, on that outcome, and go ahead with renewed energy. Sure. Hi, Verna. Nice to see you here. Have either you or Dave got any questions for me? No questions. I'll just quickly mention another aspect because I've got a few minutes to spare. I work on the concept of reframe, refocus, and redirect under the letter R as well. So when you are faced with adversity, you reframe it as you would when you're doing photography. You reframe it. Do I want this? Do I want this? Do I want that? Okay. Reframe what you are looking at. Look at it from a slightly different angle. Then refocus. Make sure you've got your focus accurate. Make sure you're looking at the parts that you want to look at. And then redirect. Change your direction and find a new way. So I've done many things as a coach, as a trainer, as a training facilitator, as a mentor. I've done lots of things in my life. I'm 65 years old. I've been there. I've got the tattoos. And only now am I redirecting to that aspiration that I had 24 years ago. I've reframed, I've refocused my product. I used to very much focus on business coaching. because that is my background, is business. And so now I'm redirecting it to focus it on healing and positivity and more life coaching, I suppose. I'd still do business coaching, but I've redirected my major energy into mojo and grit and resilience. So thank you very much for being here, be us in the live for the two of you that are here, or in the replay. I'd love to have your comments, I'd love to have your questions, and I'd love to share my summit with you, and I'd love to you all to join. So thank you very much on a Monday morning from Joburg, South Africa. Bye.